Presented in two-tone light metallic grey, blue over dark grey. The BMW 503 is less known perhaps than the 507, but if it was cherished by John Surtees, then it's certainly a very special motor car for us. And thank you very much for bringing it.
Thank you both.
Excuse me.
And next, ladies and gentlemen, we have the 1979 Rolls-Royce Phantom 6 Park Ward limousine. A mighty machine, which I know quite well personally. Now, the Phantom 6 was the final model produced by Rolls-Royce Motors before it merged with Vickers plc. Powered by the 6.75 litre V8, it was the last Rolls-Royce built on a separate chassis. Between 1968 and 1990, a total of just 374 of these were produced, but this is one of the most regal examples of this rather special car. This particular Phantom 6 was owned by Rolls-Royce Motor Cars from new, and then subsequently owned by Bentley Motors once Rolls-Royce left Crewe. As a factory demonstrator, it was constructed to be the showpiece car of the demonstration fleet, it said, and was also the press and PR car. It was built at Mullingar Park Ward to a royal specification, because it was used on occasions by Her Majesty the Queen. And there's photographs of the car when the Queen was on state visit in Sweden in 1983, where the royal standard graced the flag masts, which you can see on the car today, along on this one occasion with a set of unique number plates fitted, which denoted Her Majesty the Queen 1, or HMQ 001. I'm not sure what she thought of that.
Hardly discreet, but anyway, the wonderful list of specifications included the flag mast, of course, which we can see here. Cocktail cabinet in the division, a clock to the division rail, curtains and cushions in red velvet, why not? A carpet in cherry red, headrests, electrically operated rear seats, reading lights, vanity mirrors, air conditioner and heater, quite a long specification list. And finished, of course, in the appropriately regal colours of Mason's black and royal claret. And there's some royal claret in the back as well. Acknowledged widely as the best, it was described as the ultimate Phantom, the last word in motoring luxury, the last of the original Phantom models, and unique and historic Royal Phantom. It's now proudly part of the prestigious Johan Poonawalla collection in India. Thank you for bringing it. Thank you very much. And the flags, of course, indicating the smooth relationship between Mr. Johnson and Mr. Biden. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we have the 1935 Hispano-Suiza M70 from a private collection, but with the Porsche family inside, which we're nice to see you. Thank you for supporting us again.
Thank you.
Hispano-Suiza was founded in 1904 as an automobile manufacturer, which eventually had several factories in Spain and France producing luxury cars. Prioritizing refinement and luxury over sporty performance made them the choice of European royalty, Indian Maharajas, Hollywood film stars and industrial tycoons. The legendary Hispano-Suiza mark was superbly engineered and unashamedly decadent. Do we agree? Good. In 1934, Hispano-Suiza introduced the lovely K6, which shared many components with its sibling, the incredible 9.5 litre 12-cylinder Hispano-Suiza J12, and the K6 was said to cruise comfortably at 80 miles an hour at a time when many cars struggled to reach 80 miles per hour. What an elegant car this is.
It is, and this majestic and glamorous three-position drop head on the K6 chassis certainly makes that known. Now, just 200 examples of the K6 were built over 2 years, all of them with coach-built bodies from the likes of Soucek, Fernandez and Darin and Brandone. However, the political and economic situation in Spain was fraught, and this meant that the K6 was actually produced in Paris. However, in 1935, around 17 cars, dubbed the M70, were indeed assembled at the Barcelona factory. Thank you very much for bringing this wonderful motor car to see us.
So, just coming onto the stage, lovely to see you. We've got the 1963 Aston Martin DB4 Series 5 Vantage SS with Matthew Keller at the wheel, I believe. It's often said that cats drive Jaguars, Richard, and gentlemen drive Aston Martins, Peter. First launched at the 1956 London Motor Show, the all-new DB4 was a leap forward from Aston Martin and much more modern in its styling and technology in relation to the previous models. The 3.7-litre twin-cam straight-six engine was all new and had already proved its worth in the DBR2 racing car. The sexy and instantly recognisable touring bodywork was built using the Italian firm's patented Superleggera method.
And the first 4 series of the DB4 had open headlights, but the 5th series adopted these faired-in headlight covers first seen on the DB4 GT, a design that would subsequently be used on the new DB5. It was also based on the longer chassis that would also be used on the DB5. And this unique triple carburettor SS Vantage example spent over 40 years with the same owner through to 2013, but had sadly become neglected. It was discovered and bought in barn-fine condition at auction. Now perfectly restored to exact factory specification, it's believed to be one of the only factory DB4s with this two-tone paint scheme. This elegant off-white is in fact called platinum. Thank you very much for bringing this wonderful motor car.
Thank you. Well, next up we have the 200-mile-an-hour supercar driven by Tom Hartley Jr., the 1991 Ferrari F40 by Scaglietti. There's a young man in there. Is he driving? Hello. So from an era when the fastest production car on the planet was a goal chased by many, although we saw it also in the Aston Martin Bulldog. For Ferrari's 40th anniversary year, 1987, Enzo Ferrari said, "Let's make the best Ferrari ever." The F40 was to be the last Ferrari engineered under Enzo Ferrari's leadership, with 470 brake horsepower, twin turbocharged V8 pushing along an ultra-lightweight body, and with go-kart-like handling to match. It would take a very skilled driver, Tom, to truly wring the neck of an F40. And with a 0 to 100 mile per hour time in just 7.8 seconds, you can understand why. It's the best Ferrari ever, as quoting Enzo Ferrari.
And this particular example was delivered new to one of the best drivers ever, to the late Sir Stirling Moss in 1991, when he would have been a sprightly 62 years old. However, delivery of his new car was delayed, and Moss was rather frustrated with the factory, pointing out in a letter to them that he had raced 123 Ferraris, winning in 11 of them, but clearly did not carry the weight of being a pop star, referring to the fact that his friend Nick Mason had already taken delivery of 2 F40s, one for himself and one for Dave Gilmore. It's had just 2 owners since and has little over 3,600 miles on the clock from new. Tom, thank you for bringing it. And Tom Hartley, great supporter of the event. Thank you very much for being here.
And of course, with the F40, it's the imperfection that's desired by collectors. They're looking for weed. You need some weed to drive it. There's a mighty motor car.
Here is a magnificent motor car indeed. This is 1932 8-litre Bentley Saloon by H.J. Mulliner. Delighted to have the car here. And the 8-litre was, in fact, the last valiant attempt by Bentley to turn the company around. It certainly had the credentials, not least because the engine was a development of the straight-six 6.5-litre unit that had powered the Mark to victory in the Le Mans 24 Hours twice in succession. As such, it was the fastest production chassis in the world when it was unveiled at the 1930 Olympia show, with 103 mile an hour possible with the high ratio back axle. In fact, W.O. Bentley proudly proclaimed that the 8-litre would achieve 100 miles an hour, whatever the coachwork it was carrying. A state-of-the-art design with masses of torque on tap, it produced between 2 and 230 horsepower. And a typical 8-litre, as you can imagine, would weigh well over 2 tons. But the engine had such torque that the Autocar reviewer of 1930 marvelled that it could be driven in top gear, and I quote, "as slowly as a man walks, and the whole time the engine is silent and smooth. In fact, it's only rarely apparent there is a big engine working under the bonnet at all." 100 examples were to be built at a price that was £50 more expensive than the Rolls-Royce Phantom II. And despite this raciness, the car was praised for its smoothness and ease of use, but neither attribute, sadly, was enough to help Bentley stave off the impact of the Great Depression, and the company fell into receivership in 1930, followed by eventual ownership by arch-rival Rolls-Royce.
And this car, Richard, this particular chassis remained unsold when Bentley Motors went into receivership in 1931. Its first owner, Bernard Hobbs of Rugby, paid half price for the chassis. H.J. Mulliner were tasked with forming a 4-light saloon body in aluminium over a wooden frame, a process that was finished by September that year. And the official service records point to minor work being carried out during its early life before it was sold again in 1934. And by 1947, it had found its way to Jack Charters, who took it to Canada, and he drove it from Halifax to his log cabin home in British Columbia, some 400 miles north of Vancouver, apparently having a head-on collision with a moose at some point. And I've been reliably told by a man that fixes cars for a living, the moose survived. So aluminium's better than we thought. In 1949, Charles would perish after getting stuck in a blizzard in his truck. He was a mere half a mile from safety following a 14-mile walk, when his wife passed the car and Captain Lawrence Gowdy, who took it to Vancouver and then Victoria, maintaining ownership for 30 years. During this time, one of the wings made, well, it's in my notes, made contact with a moose. Lance, you've messed me up there, you've thrown me off track. Anyway, wonderful car, a mighty car, beautifully driven. Let's listen for the crunch. Oh, well done.
Warm knife through butter, lovely. Next up, Peter.
Next up, we've got the
1936 Jaguar SS100 2.5 litre, brought to us, we think, by Peter Thornton.
Peter Thornton, and the SS name was originally formed. The SS company was originally formed by William Lyons as the Swallow Sidecar Company, and Lyons would go on to design and build some beautiful motor cars using the SS brand, this SS100 being one of them. It was only after the war that the astute Lyons recognised the negatives as cars bearing the SS badging, and thus Jaguar was born. And the SS100, in my opinion, certainly is one of the most easily recognisable, attractive and well-proportioned of all pre-war cars. A truly dapper two-seater for the dapper young man about town. Are you feeling dapper, sir? No? Okay, well, there's an exception to the rule every time. But power was from a 2.5 litre straight six motor, although they also made a 3.5 litre. And of course, the 100 in the name was indicative of the new model's top speed. The SS100 was nimble, a racing star, and in fact, and elegant.
Now, this particular example has been a racing star and a TV celebrity. It competed at various club meetings and hill climbs in the late 1940s before finding a job as a marshal's car at Brands Hatch when it was repainted white. Its next owner kept it for over 40 years, and it found another job in the advertising industry, appearing in a television advert for Players Cigars. Its most recent restoration was completed in July 2020, and the car's history has been catalogued in a 3-volume story. So it's a well-documented, lovely motor car, and I think he looks very dapper in there.
Lots of louvers in there. I think they're prone to getting warm. Okay, so Dave, ride your Python up here.
So this, ladies and gentlemen, is the 1962 FMR Messerschmitt KR200 Deluxe. And as we mentioned earlier, when the car passed through, this was in fact the winner of the RAC Club Trophy last year, hence getting this entry into the main concours for this year. Well done, Dave, for winning that and for bringing the car here again. Now, powered by a single-cylinder air-cooled 2-stroke motor, this dome-top deluxe example of the KR200 was first delivered to Brighton in 1962, complete with the incredible snakeskin interior. Staying with its first owner for some 43 years, having been used as a daily driver until being laid up in the 1980s. It was acquired by its present owner in 2005 and treated to an amazing 11-year restoration to the impeccable condition we see it presented today.
And it's certainly one of the finest examples of its type in the world, and as such has been featured in Classic and Sports Car magazine, and hence it's winning, as Richard said, the RAC Club Trophy at last year's Concours, and of course, backed by popular demand, the Messerschmitt KR200 Deluxe. Thank you, Dave. Thank you very much. And coming onto the stage now, Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, is a 1930 Bentley 4.5 litre Tourer with David and Julia Little. The 4.5 litre Bentley, introduced in 1928, was enthusiastically welcomed by those who missed the 4-cylinder engine, proven in the earlier 3 litre, and for whom the wonderful 6.5 litre was too big and cumbersome. The model proved to be as successful on the track as on the road, winning numerous races at Brooklands and several European tracks, most notably the 1928 Le Mans, piloted by wealthy Bentley chairman and Bentley boy Wolf Bonato. A sports 4-seater by Van den Pla, with fully balanced wings. It was built to the latest specification, but was curiously ordered, this car, with an aluminium sump and extra long bonnet. This was a feature usually reserved for the racing Bentleys to allow access to the back of the dashboard. So this chassis has a panelled aperture between the body and the bulkheads that negates this. So the extra long bonnet is just for aesthetics, essentially, and thus provides a suitably imposing look, making this a one-off.
Now then, if you're a fan of the hit TV show Peaky Blinders, and who isn't, you'll know the importance of the Southampton Arms. Now, this particular motor car in front of us was delivered in 1930 via Jack Olding and Company to a Mr. Arthur Grout. Now, Arthur Grout was the landlord of the pub at the centre of the racetrack wars as depicted in the TV show. Unfortunately for Arthur, the car's commanding looks would do nothing to ward off the creditors. His failure to keep up repayments meant the vehicle was returned to the factory in 1935, and that comment was denoted on the chassis records. According to local legend, Arthur amassed a fortune very quickly and ran 3 pubs, and he owned other Bentleys too. Apparently, upon his death, he left an enormous fortune. Now, this particular car's own fortunes took a turn for the better when Dr. Leslie bought the car from Bentley Motors in 1935, and as with many Bentleys, it became part of the family, taking its role in holidays and even the school run. Having passed from father to son, today chassis AD 3652 stands in extremely original condition, as it has done fewer than 100,000 miles in more than 9 decades. Throughout that time, the car has never been rebuilt and has only ever been worked on when it needed it, and its sole major works took place at a North London Bentley specialist just after the Second World War. In recent years, the interior trim has benefited from careful preservation, as has the external body covering. The weather equipment has been replaced, keeping it practical and usable. Its inherent robustness was recently proved with a 1,000-mile test in which the car proved to be totally and unsurprisingly reliable. Thank you very much indeed for bringing it. Thank you. And coming up now, an instantly recognisable shape, the 1984 Lamborghini Countach 500S by Bertone, and we're thanking Mark Bogart for bringing the car. Now, this, as you know, ladies and gentlemen, a true spaceship for the road, a jaw-dropping design by the brilliant Marcello Gandini, and it still is catching as much attention today as when it was introduced in 1982 and was one of 321 examples built. The 500S benefited from an increased engine capacity over the 400S. Now, with its 4.8 litres in V12 configuration with 4 valves per cylinder layout and a 6 carburetor setup, 60 miles an hour was achieved in 5.3 seconds on the way to a screaming 170 miles an hour. This, as many of us remember, was the bedroom poster car. The owner sadly had his childhood Countach 500S poster stolen from his garage, but in 1993 he had the enviable opportunity to acquire the real thing.
And in 1984, this UK delivery example in right-hand drive, it was finished in Bianco with a unique blue and white leather interior, as chosen by the first owner, a well-known Manchester hairdresser. I wouldn't call that a hairdresser's car. Some may argue that the purity of the original Countach design was compromised as the model evolved, but for this enthusiastic owner, it really is the rear wing, the chin spoiler, the wheel arches, and low-profile tyres that create the masterpiece supercar statement that has never been equalled. It's a car more alive than any I have driven. This is a quote from the owner. It's a car more alive than any I have driven or owned. It makes people smile. It's a supercar. One day when I can't drive anymore, or petrol is no longer sold, I will just screw it on my bedroom wall and simply look at it. But don't put it above your bed. It might fall.
Thank you for bringing it.
Thank you. 1960. Ferrari 250 GT Coupe Pininfarina with Dr. Cecilia Muldoon, who's not in the car. But anyway, we are going to say a few words about the car. It's also known as Lupo. All of CC's cars have a name. So I mean Lupo, that's the car, not CC. It was originally introduced at the 1958 Paris Motor Show, the car, not CC, and designed by Pininfarina, etc. The Ferrari 250 GT Coupe was built for wealthy clientele who demanded a sporty and luxurious Ferrari they could use as a daily driver, and many had modifications. It has the 3.3-litre Colombo V12, as used to power many Ferraris of this period.
Now, 353 examples were built and it became Ferrari's most commercially successful model. However, this special example is a one-off, with a competition engine and fully rally specified. It's got velocity stacks on the carburetors, it had headrests, extra driving lights, and as you can see, the combination of classic silver over red is truly special, and we thank you very much for bringing it. Thank you, Cece, for bringing it, and thank you to her stand-in pilots for bringing it to the stage.
Thank you, Dad. Well, it's one of those cars, Richard, that, you know, if you had the right connections, you could have the right modifications, I would say. It's like having a good plastic surgeon.
I wouldn't know, Peter, but thank you for telling me that.
Next up, we've got the 2005 Ferrari Enzo, presented by Beatrice Brown.
Now, this was first unveiled in 2002 at the Paris Motor Show, and like its predecessors, the Enzo was designed to push the performance boundaries of what was possible in a road car. The Ferrari Enzo was built using technology very close to Ferrari's Formula One car of the time, meaning that its 6-litre V12 delivers 110 horsepower per litre. It was the first use of the award-winning F140 engine that's still in use today in the 812 Superfast and the Competizione. The body panels are a mixture of carbon fibre and Kevlar, while the chassis was constructed from carbon fibre and Nomex honeycomb.
Hello. And you need to have Formula One driver skill levels to drive one quickly. In practice, that meant handling lightning quick changes from the paddle shift transmission, 650 brake horsepower, 3.1 seconds to 0 to 62 miles per hour, and a 217 miles per hour top speed. Of course, you need balls of carbon fibre too, as well as 450,000 pounds. There were just 400 units of the Enzo built. The final build model was gifted to the Pope, and a wonderful car. And prior to that, we had the 1997 Ferrari F50, and this example is presented by Charles Nicholas Aileen Brown. As one of just 349 examples built, had 512 horsepower from the race-bred 4.7 litre V12, an adaptation of the 1990 Formula One engine with an 8,000 RPM redline. Luca di Montezemolo said at the time the F50 would be the first and the last Formula One car with 2 seats. Styling roots can be traced to the Ferrari Mythos, presented at the 1989 Tokyo show, a concept styled by Pietro Camardella and Lorenzo Ramaciotti for Pininfarina. The gearbox and engine were mounted to the carbon fibre tub as a structural part of the chassis in a similar fashion to a racing car.
Enormous centre-lock magnesium alloy wheels from Speedline will take you to 60 miles an hour in just 3.8 seconds, with 100 miles an hour flicking by in less than 5 seconds later. Ferrari claimed a maximum speed of 202 miles per hour. And the removable targa top allows any resultant unpleasant passenger smells to escape from the cockpit. It says it here. The car is also fitted with straight pipe 2B Sports exhaust, which also helps to cover up any nervous noises from the passenger, who, as you can see, is enjoying a little glass of champagne. And the most popular colour for the F50 was, unsurprisingly, Rosso Corsa, but instead this F50 is one of just 4 produced in striking Argento Nürburgring. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, you're going to leave the glass as well. This is not a fuel station. Cheers.
Thank you for bringing it.
Yep.
Thank you. So Richard, coming up next, when we get some peace and quiet, is the 1971 Citron SM MyLord by Thierry Dahec. Yep, so if ever there was a manufacturer that led the way in innovation and avant-garde styling, then Citroën must surely be up towards the top of the list. And Citroën's SM range was like something out of the future. The space-age styling from Robert Opron was one thing, but the innovative features such as the Avari variable assisted power steering and Maserati V6 gave it a GT performance, and adding DS-derived pneumatic self-leveling suspension, self-leveling and directional lights, and the future was now, and now it's you.
The MyLord Cabriolet was created by French coach builder Henri Chaperon. 4-seater built on a strengthened SM chassis. It was reassuringly expensive, costing nearly as much as the Ferrari Daytona when new. This is the second of only 5 MyLord SMs built, and the Paris Motor Show star for Chaperon 1972, and as such it has numerous special features such as air conditioning as well as leather-covered steering wheel and dashboard and chrome trim around the rear wheel arches. And all of those stylish original features remain beautifully preserved today, as you can see. It's never been restored, the paint finish is largely original, and the interior upholstery is believed to be 100% as it was when it rolled onto the Paris Motor Show stand in 1972. Thierry, thank you very much for bringing it. You both look at home in that wonderful
As well as that lovely hand-painted pinstripe there in green. That's wonderful, that's so neat. So next, Richard, we've got the 1967 Ferrari 275 GTB4 by Scaglietti. Oh, no, we don't. Sorry. I didn't see that. It was hiding behind the plant. It's rather small, that car.
So this is the 1921 Bamford and Martin A3. Delighted to see this very early pre-Aston Martin here.
And this car is the third of 5 prototypes built. It's the oldest surviving Aston Martin. The original company was founded in 1913 by Lionel Martin and Robert Bamford. And the Aston entered into the company name as they had frequently raced specials at the Aston Hill Climb near Aston Clinton. This car, also known as A3, is believed to have been driven and used in competitive events by Lionel Martin himself. And the chassis switched between a sports 2-seat coachwork and a streamlined body for racing. In fact, the Aston Martin Heritage Trust Archive catalogues this chassis number with several body styles in period.
Now it's powered by a 1.5-litre 4-cylinder motor, and this early lightweight racer was driven by Bertie Kensington-Moore, a well-known driver at the time, who achieved an impressive 86.2 miles per hour over 100 miles around the Brooklyn circuit. After victory in the Cop Hill Climb in 1922 with Moore again behind the wheel, this early development prototype had an oil and filter change and was sold to its first private owner. Re-registration with his registration it still wears today. Its new owner continued to compete with some success around Brooklands. Roll forward to 2002, the Newport Pagnell Works auction, and this car was spotted in poor condition by marque expert Stuart Skilbeck. Aided by a generous contribution from His Excellency Sheikh Nasser Al Sabah, the Aston Martin Heritage Trust were able to reacquire this remarkable piece of its own heritage and fully restore it to its early open 2-seat sports configuration guided by archive photographs. And it's now on display, when it's not here, at the Aston Martin Heritage Trust Museum in Oxfordshire. Thank you very much for bringing it.
It's fascinating that even the Aston Martin Heritage Trust had to make a judgment call as to what body style to restore it to.
I think they chose well. Suits it. So now we have the 1967 Ferrari 275 GTB4 by Scaglietti, brought to us by Robert Short. Now, it was unveiled at the Paris Motor Show in October 1966, and Ferrari's 275 GTB4 cam was an evolution of the 275 GTB, which had first appeared 2 years before. The major difference in the new car lay under the bonnet, where a revised version of Colombo's short block 3.3-litre V12 was installed, which now produced 300 brake horsepower. The 4-cam variants are easily spotted by the long central bonnet hump to accommodate the twin camshafts per cylinder bank. Sporting purposeful shark-like gills and voluptuous curves, the 275 GTB4 is a beautiful, powerful and versatile 1960s road Ferrari.
And this example, ladies and gentlemen, is spectacular and aggressive, one of only 330 examples built in total. It's also one of only 6 examples originally to leave the factory in this sultry black, which really sets the lines off beautifully. Add that to the beautiful, rich, deep Cartier red leather upholstery, the Nardi wood rim wheel and the well-placed gear lever ready to slide through that classic Ferrari gate, and you have one of the most desirable, sexy, exciting and road-going Ferraris of all time. Thank you. And next up, ladies and gentlemen, we have the 1964. This is a very historic motor car. 1964 Porsche 901 Coupe from a private collection. And if there's any sports car that has benefited from as many restyles and re-engineering projects as the Porsche 911 lineage, I cannot think of it. And this is where it all started. But it's a 901, not a 911. But that's because when Porsche triumphantly displayed its follow-up to the 356 at the 1963 Frankfurt Motor Show, the car wore the 901 badge. However, when the same model was presented at the 1964 Paris Auto Salon, Peugeot, who also presented cars with the 01 took umbrage to its German rival using any three-digit number with the 0 in the middle. Porsche would change the moniker to 911 despite having built 82 pre-production cars bearing the 901 badge, as this car.
Now this example, which is chassis 300078, was displayed at the Geneva Motor Show in March 1965, announcing the 911 to the world, effectively. And this 901 is one of just 6 believed to be left in existence. Powered by a 2-litre flat 6, the first 82 cars built had numerous distinguishing features, but the easiest external feature is the engine cover, which is unique to these cars, as is the rear license plate holder. And the 901 was the first to arrive in Switzerland, bought new via AMAG by racing driver Claudio Ponti. True to form, Ponti would use the car in rallies across Switzerland and Italy. Later discovered and acquired by Alois Ruff of Ruff Automobile GmbH, who undertook a 2-year restoration to perfect this highly important piece of Porsche history. And it's now part of a private collection, I'm glad to say, here in the UK. Thank you very much for bringing it.
Thank you. I think that, you know, that 901, it all started there, and look, they're still building 911s today, Richard, and you can see the DNA still running through the cars that are built today.
That's what happens when you get it right first time. Yep. So now we have the 1954 Ferrari 250 GT Europa by Pininfarina, brought to us by the Fimbo family. The 250 Europa took over from the 212 Inter and shared the same chassis as the 375 America. First revealed to the public in January 1953, the 250 Europa was Ferrari's first true Grand Touring motor car, demonstrating that the company was willing to produce cars for well-heeled customers who preferred to drive their cars on the road rather than on the track. These sales were used to fund Ferrari's racing endeavours, of course. The Europa was unique in the 250 series, being the only one to utilise the race-bred Aurelio Lampredi designed V12. The Ferrari 250 name was awarded to an array of different Ferrari models, both competition and road, but this model is where it started. The common denominator is the entire 250 series of Ferraris is the engine capacity of 3 litres in a V12 configuration, in this case fueled via triple Weber carburetors.
And it was styled and built by Pininfarina, who were to become Ferrari's leading coach builder, and features the classic wide and deep oval egg crate grille, which would set a trend for many other sports cars. All 21 Europas were completed in left-hand drive, except for this car, which is unique, being the only right-hand drive example. Originally sold to Mr. Sautet from Lyon, I'm not sure why he ordered a right-hand drive car, in 1954, in November. It was imported into the UK in 1966, and the Finberg family, who I should add are great supporters of this event, worked very hard to make it the success it is. The Finberg family took ownership as far back as 1971. So this year it celebrates 50 years in one very careful and knowledgeable family ownership. Other than the required ongoing maintenance and a recent engine rebuild, I believe, its repair, it's always been kept as original as possible. It's a veteran of numerous rallies and tours, and it was also looked after the Finberg family school run when the Mini wasn't working, apparently. So thank you for bringing it, and I believe it's the first time it's been running for a while. So sounds good. Thank you. 1 second, so we need to make sure we know where we are. Okay, so thank you. Next up, we've got the 1948 Delahaye 135M Coupe by Chaperon, presented by Charles Chadwick Healy. In 1936, the 135M was launched with a 3.6-litre engine available in 90 horsepower, 105 horsepower and 115 brake horsepower forms. Production stopped in 1940 for the war, but when hostilities ended, new cars appeared again. Over a 19-year lifespan, 2,000 135s were built, with coach building from the likes of Figoni and Falaschi, Letournier Marchand, Alphonse Guyot, Marcel Portu, Frère Dubois, Jacques Sauchek, Franay, Chaperon, Anton, there were many. In 1924, on the 24th of January 1949, Chaperon delivered this car to the Swiss Delahaye distributor Albert Goy in Geneva. It's thought that Chaperon built 3 similar coupes designed by his stylist Carlo Delay. Though a photograph of another car shows it in fact with a divided windscreen, whereas this car has a full flat windscreen.
And it's also unique in having the Delahaye name badge on a wand halfway up the radiator grille rather than on the bonnet itself. And although a post-war car, there remain many influences from pre-war streamlining in the teardrop forms on the front and rear wings, as you can see. It also features the delicately formed bullet tail lights perched on pods. Its first owner was the Marquis de Cuevas, Jorge Cuevas Bartolin, founder of the Grand Ballet de Monte Carlo. There were several other French owners, but the car then went to Australia and was later brought back to the UK by Taylor and Crawley. It was acquired by the present owner from noted Delahaye collector and connoisseur Abercrombie. Thank you very much for bringing it.
Okay, thank you, Richard.
So, thank you. Let's bring the next car up, which is this astonishing design. 1937 Rolls-Royce Phantom 3 airline limousine by coach builders H.J. Mulliner. And we're very grateful to Mr. and Mrs. Robet for bringing this car to us from the delights of northern France. And now, the new Phantom was originally launched to replace the Silver Ghost in 1925 and continue with straight 6 power from a larger displacement of 7.6 litres. And by the time the Phantom 3 was launched in 1936, it was powered, silently of course, by an all-new and technically advanced 7.3 litre V12 motor, the ultimate in refinement and luxury. Following the war, Rolls-Royce would revert to straight 6 and V8 power, and a V12 would not be used again by Rolls-Royce until the Silver Seraph came along in 1998. Now, Phantom 3s were commanding and majestic, with many of the leading coach builders such as Barker, Park Ward, Mulliner, Hooper and Thrupp and Mabberley tasked with dressing them. A combination of limousines, saloons, coupes and convertibles made up the bulk of the 727 examples of the Phantom 3 built.
And Richard, this perhaps, what might say rather stern-looking motor car is immediately recognisable as the Monty car, the car used by Field Marshal Montgomery following World War II. Noted, of course, for its rather interesting, intriguing forward sloping windscreen. And it often makes me wonder, thinking of old cartoons, whether they hadn't screwed everything down properly before they tested the brakes. It feels like everything launched forward, and it's a wonderful
But you
look.
can tell why.
But it was first ordered by Sir Alan Butler, who was in fact chairman of the de Havilland Aircraft Company, and he instructed H.J. Mulliner to craft an airline limousine body, which is typical of this sort of smooth sloping back. And the quirky forward sloping screen was in fact styled by de Havilland, as he had found that this design was aerodynamically effective on aircraft tested in his wind tunnel. The aerodynamic trend is presented throughout with its smooth lines, its airline styled smooth rear back, and the rear wheel spats, of course. Lovely running boards on this car as well. Many famous people have ridden in this motor car, including King George VI, Sir Winston Churchill and General Eisenhower. And Montgomery in fact became so enamoured with this car that he reacquired it later for his own private use. So it's a very famous motor car, and thank you for bringing. Look at those headlamps.
No, the whole car is stunning. We're delighted to have it here. Thank you very much for bringing it.
Thank you. So about to come up now, we're ready for you, is the 1996 McLaren F1 GTR, chassis number 11R, from a private collection.
Now, having won outright at Le Mans in 1995, McLaren continued with their racing exploits for the 1996 season. But racing moves quickly, and some modifications were made to the GTR. They lowered the front suspension and gave it a deeper front spoiler. They uprated the gearbox and housed it in a lightweight magnesium casing. And the car, and presumably the drivers, went on a diet. And these changes made the 96 F1 GTR the fastest of the GTRs, achieving 205 miles an hour on the Honneur Straight to Mulsanne at Le Mans, hitting that speed with ease. And the racing GTR had greater downforce than the road cars due to this enormous rear wing. It was claimed that it created so much downforce that the car could drive upside down along a tunnel at 100 miles an hour, but we're not sure whether the theory was ever tested.
And I should say, Richard, I feel I need to shout a bit. This is one of 9 1996 spec GTRs built. Chassis 11R was delivered new to the Gyriox racing team. It raced a variety of different liveries. But what's particularly interesting about this car, an interesting twist, is it was then, after its racing endeavours, discreetly acquired by Mercedes-Benz, who used it to test key components for their new GT1 Challenger, the CLK GTR. It was fitted with prototype bodywork and Mercedes' new 6-cylinder V12 motor. And the finished Mercedes-Benz CLK GTR was ready in the last week of March, at which point this car was returned to its original configuration and sold. Now in private hands, registered to be driven on the road, with passenger seats fitted, I believe, on either side of the driver, of course. And when someone suggests that their car is a race car for the road, you might raise an eyebrow and think about this amazing McLaren, a true race car for the road. You have passenger seats?
Thanks, Tom.
Hi, Tom. Finished in that wonderful papaya colour, which was used on the Le Mans cars, or the Le Mans sold.
Aha! Hello, Mosses.
So the 1924, yep, Bentley 3-litre pickup, or sometimes known as the Works hack.
Or Scrap 3.
Scrap 3, again, by H.J. Mulliner. The Bentley 3-litre was the firm's first car and developed the brand's sporting pretensions by winning the Le Mans 24 Hours in 1924 with John Duff and Frank Clement behind the wheel. It was quite a performer, with top speeds between 80 miles per hour and 100 miles per hour, depending on which of the three versions you chose. You could have the blue label, red label, and the most potent, the green label. Most bodies were completed by Van den Pla, and owners included royalty and socialites such as Gertrude Lawrence, Beatrice Lilly, and Prince George. So how, Richard, you know about this, did one of these cars end up as a pickup truck, referred to as Scrap 3?
Well, yeah, referred to as Scrap 3. Well, coach builders Gurney Nutting were apparently working on 12 Bentley 3-litre chassis during the Easter of 1924 when fire broke out at their works, and chassis PF7782 was one of the 12. And when Bentley retrieved what they could from the charred remains, it would be reborn as a works breakdown van. Bentley raided the parts store and saw second-hand parts to build a series of breakdown vehicles, though precise numbers are not known. Just one picture exists of a works van taken just outside the Cricklewood workshop, and the picture depicts a works vehicle with the same body as the vehicle you see before us on stage. And PF7782's true form was hidden away for many years after Bentley was sold to Rolls-Royce, with a 6-light saloon body sitting on the chassis. And the same owner loved the car between 1959 and 2009, with its true identity never uncovered. But in 2011, extensive research revealed the real history, and the decision was made to bring the car back to its original form. Now, all of the original parts have been used. The hydraulic dampers in particular are a rare find on 3 litres these days. At some stage in its history, the number of the chassis rivets have been changed to bolts with split pins in a similar fashion to race-prepared cars. The attention to detail on this car is fascinating, with individual pouches for the handbooks and manuals for the various Bentley models of the day and service parts to maintain them. Further research revealed that although PF7782 was built in 1924, it wasn't actually registered for road use until 3 years later. It's thought that it was registered so it could be driven to Le Mans as a support vehicle for the racing team, as trade plates weren't allowed to be used overseas. And this has been restored to its original glory by a company called R.C. Moss and Company, and somebody of a similar name is, or two people of similar names are sitting in the car. Delighted to see you here, both of you. It's fantastic. Might we later see what's underneath the tonneau at the back there?
Le Mans mechanics.
It's probably a Le Mans, yeah. Well, it's probably suitcases and booze, I would imagine, but knowing these two. But thank you, Graham, for bringing the car along, and do thank Lawrence Moore for bringing it as well. Thank you. Next we have another iconic British brand, 1933 Talbot London AV105. Now, not to be confused with the French Talbot Largos, the Talbot mark was, nonetheless, part of the Anglo-French Sunbeam Talbot Darroch collective. And it was the 1930 Talbot 90 of 2.3 litres capacity, competing in the 3-litre class, that really gave Talbot its reputation in international motorsport. And Talbot's reputation for competition cars owed a lot to the efforts of the Tolworth-based motor dealership and racing preparation specialist Fox and Nickel, who looked after the works team from the beginning of 1930 to the end of 1932. For 1931, Talbot's chief designer produced a new car with a full 3-litre engine, which was lighter than its 2.3-litre predecessor, the new model being the AV105. Famously registered Go 51 to Go 54 consecutively, 4 Fox and Nickel Works Talbot 105s enjoyed an outstanding run of successes during the 1931 and 1932 seasons, highlights of which included first, second and third in class at the Brooklands Double 12 in 1931, as well as third overall at Le Mans.
So, and the AV105 also proved to be a formidable rally car, and Talbot chief designer, Swiss-born George Roche, had always tested these cars in the Alps, so he had lots of experience of those difficult roads. And this particular car is one of 9 chassis fitted with the Alpine replica bodywork, unique in that it doesn't have any doors, so therefore saving weight on hinges and handles, etc. It has no stowage compartments for hoods or fascia, all with a view to saving weight. It competed in several events before and after World War II, and following a bit of a rest for the last 30 years, has honoured its racing pedigree, competing around Europe in numerous road rallies, as well as the Le Mans Classic, Silverstone Classic, and Goodwood Revival. So, and we have the stickers to prove it. Thank you.
Wonderful Talbot. Now the next car we have is the 1949 Bristol 401 Drophead Cabriolet by Pininfarina. Delighted to see this wonderful car. Now the Bristol Car Company merged the interests of AFN Limited, manufacturer of Fraser-Nash cars, with the Bristol Aeroplane Company's plan to manufacture a high-quality sports car. Fraser-Nash held the rights to BMW's race-proven 328 engine, and this 2-litre 6-cylinder engine would be used to power all Bristol cars up until 1961. While more than 600 401s were built, a mere 7 drophead cabriolets were created by Pininfarina, and this is one of just 4 survivors. Chassis number 401/208 was shipped to Pininfarina in Turin in 1948, the completed car returning in time for purchase in March 1949 by its first owner, Robert Lee, Esquire of London.
And of course it's distinctively Italian and aerodynamic, aided by one of the most notable features, which are these lovely recessed door handles here, which just give it a lovely, complete smooth look. It was also fitted from new with Alfin brake drums, close ratio gearbox and a remote gear change. In the November 1948 edition of the Autocar, the Bristol 401 Drophead Coupe Cabriolet by Pininfarina was described as the combination of coachwork by leading Italian designers on this latest version of a thoroughbred high-performance chassis, providing the perfect car for the discriminating enthusiast. Do you agree, Anthony? Do you feel like a discriminating? Well, we agree. We think you are discriminating enthusiasts, and looking lovely in the car.
Congratulations, wonderful car.
So the record of ownership is unbroken and well recorded by the Bristol Owners Club, and during its 72-year life, this Bristol has been owned by a countess, an actor, and a politician, as well as a professor from Oxford. So thank you for bringing it, and it looks lovely, and thank you for doing the tour, and for the plug for next year. Good to see you. So next up, Richard, we've got the 1935 Bugatti Type 57 Stelvio Cabriolet from the Pearl collection. Launched at the 1934 Paris Salon, the new Type 57 model represented a concerted attempt at producing a fast and luxurious touring car in series. And to quote the Mark Authority Hugh Conway, the model is the most celebrated non-racing car that Bugatti has ever produced, and we agree. Powered by a work of mechanical art, 3.3-litre straight 8, and that's the thing about Bugattis, the engines really were works of art when you look at them, minimalist but beautiful to look at. It has twin overhead camshafts and available with or without a Roots type blower. Originally there were 3 body styles made by the factory for the Type 37, the 2-door Stelvio, as we see here, the 4-door Galibier with 4 seats, the 2-door 4-seat Ventoux, the 2-seat notchback OPULENT, and the uber exotic Atlantic Coupe. Gradually the building of the bodies was transferred to the coachmaker Gangloff in Colmar, starting with the Stelvio in 1936 and then also the Ventoux.
Now, this example is a Series 1 Stelvio Cabriolet with forward foldable windscreen, as you can see, and a fully disappearing soft top, giving much cleaner lines when open compared with other contemporary cabriolets. And one look, as you can see, at the vast wood rim wheel perched at the end of a long polished steering column, which juts out at chest level. Earlier cars had 3 hinges on the doors, whereas this late Series 1 now has 2 hinges on the door opening in the now standard forward hinging position. It was delivered to its first owner on the 6th of April 1935, who was Robert Vetterli, a successful amateur racer and Swiss lawyer who also lived in Poland, where he kept the car. He drove it frequently and apparently used it to drive his friends in Polish ice hockey team around the countryside. It spent most of its later life in Switzerland before falling into disrepair until it was acquired in 1995 and restored under the watchful eye of Bugatti specialist Jaap Bram Rubin. The shrewd Bram Rubin then sold it on to another Dutch gentleman, taking a Porsche 550A Spider in exchange. So it's had a checkered history, but it's wonderfully come out at the other end. Thank you very much for bringing it. It's back in Switzerland. Fantastic. Thank you.
I love the twin-mounted spares, but we talked earlier, Richard, about the sort of things like lights and handles spoiling the coach builder's art. I love the way those lights are perched on the end of the wings there. I think that's fabulous. So next, Richard, we've got the 1956 Bentley S1 Continental Drophead Coupe Park Ward with Dr. Jorg and Ramona Waller. Good to see you, looking very elegant.
And this time you made it. Fantastic. Yeah, they tried very hard to get here last year and didn't get over the border. Anyway, great to see it here. Now, this aristocratic hand-built Bentleys of the 1950s and 60s represent some of the rarest, most glamorous and luxurious motor cars of all time. And this majestic S1 Continental Park Ward Drophead Coupe is, as you can see, no exception. Many may think of horsepower, number of cylinders, looks and many other qualities when assessing a motor car, and they all count, of course. However, build quality is a major factor too, and fitting an exquisite coach for a body onto a large open car such as this and eliminating the shakes, rattles, rolls and squeaks was also of major importance to Bentley Motors. And that's where build quality of these Bentleys, especially those by Park Ward, shines through, even as you can see today.
And this particular S1 Continental Park Ward drophead is a rare, as it's only one of 31 left-hand drive examples built, and of course the Continental option made them surprisingly sporty and nimble to drive. I hope you agree. Occasionally. But the Continentals were fitted with a rev counter as standard, as well as having a more sporty suspension setup and a higher rear axle ratio. It was first delivered to the UK in 1956, restored by the best and elegantly presented in midnight blue over tan. But when we talk about the restoration, Richard, ladies and gentlemen, stand back in this dark blue and look, there's just not a wave in that coachwork. The panel fit is beautiful, and that's what Concours is all about, getting these cars, presenting them to absolute perfection. And this 1956 Bentley encapsulates the impossibly glamorous and romantic era of the 1950s London in furs, haute couture from Dior, Hartnell, Chanel. That's what I see when I see this, and I see it in you two as well. Norman Parkinson shoots for Vogue. There you go. I can't flatter you anymore.
This is the cover of a magazine right here. Thank you both for bringing it. We love the fact that you kept trying. Great to have you here with us.
So coming up now, Richard, is the 1951 Jaguar XK120 Le Mans racer with Tony Best at the wheel. One of the most celebrated sports cars of all time, with its 3.4 litre straight six, double overhead. Oh, that's a good sight, Victor, thank you. With its 3.4 litre straight six, double overhead camshaft engine, the XK engine, 225 brake horsepower. The XK120 was launched first at the 1948 Earls Court Motor Show. It was graceful. It had the harmonious, sinewy lines of a leaping cat. It had pace. The 120 stood for its incredible 120 miles per hour top speed. And it had space. Well, 2 seats are enough anyway. So these cars were snapped up by the leading celebrities and race drivers of the time. The very first car, in fact, was destined for Hollywood royalty, none other than Clark Gable. Jaguar also built a fixed-head coupe and took XK120s rallying and to the track, evolving into the XK120C, which we're going to be talking about tomorrow, I think. And then the C-Type Racer, which won at Le Mans twice in the early 1950s. And of course, this particular motor car has its very own claim to racing fame. This is the actual XK120 that finished 6th in class at the 11th overall at the 1951 Le Mans, the highest placed XK120 ever. Privately entered, Jaguar assisted with preparing the car due to fears that the all-new C-Type may not be ready in time. However, and you can notice the holes cut in the bonnet here, which were actually features. They were to help the mechanics to speed up pit stops for things like oil changes, etc., the radiator. It also has the external competition fuel filler. And these fears of the C-Type not being ready were unfounded, as that year Peter Walker and Peter Whitehead took overall victory by a margin of 9 laps. And this car would go on to compete regularly at club meetings and still race today. Do you race it today yourself, sir? Not yet, okay. Le Mans Classic, well, we'll look out and we'll be
watching for you. Thank you for bringing it.
Thank you.
So Peter, we're starting the next group of motor cars now with this very special 1958 Bentley S1 by Freestone and Webb, known as the Honeymoon Express.
Well, that's right, Richard. We like a honeymoon. Freestone and Webb were one of England's most prestigious coach builders. And their work on Rolls-Royce and Bentley chassis is among its best. By the 1950s, business had become tough though, and to keep the company going, they became part of the Fritz Swain dealership group, a rather large dealership group actually. Seeking to revitalise the famous coach builder's fortunes, it was felt that something new, glamorous and eye-catching could be the winning formula. And this was the striking result. The company's 1957 Earls Court Motor Show centre stage. It's eccentric by British standards of the day. The coach builder's art in this car was demonstrated with the utmost freedom of expression.
The power-operated hood, as you can see, is completely concealed. The headlamps are housed in the elegant teardrop-shaped nacelles, and the long tapered wings end in these elaborate and beautifully formed tail fins that you can see. The long flanks are concave, forming coves which are accentuated further by the two-tone finish, and the long, smooth flowing rear treatment combined with the fins possibly even inspired the original Batmobile, we think. Basically, a two-seat convertible with most of the rear seat space used to conceal the hood. There was still ample space in the boot to house a few days' luggage, and thus the enthusiastic media at the show nicknamed the Freestone and Webb Bentley the Honeymoon Express. Princess Margaret loved it and demanded one to be sent to her home for a test drive, at which press photographers mobbed both the young royal and the car. Only 3 examples were ever built, 2 on the Rolls-Royce Cloud 1 chassis, and this, the only example on the Bentley chassis. Sadly, the goal to revitalise Freestone and Webb didn't work, and the company ceased trading the year following the show. But a long-standing member of a prestigious private collection, this is the first time this car has been shown in many years, and we're very grateful for you to bring it in. Thank you so much.
And are you off on honeymoon? You are? You are? Okay, well, good luck with that.
Yeah. It might be used for a honeymoon again, apparently. Hot off the press. Next we have another very special, aren't they all special motor cars, Peter? The 1933 Lancia Di Lambda232. Now the new Di Lambda followed with lessons learned from the technically innovative Lambda, was built on an extremely rigid separate chassis and semi-monocoque, while a strong V8 motor replaced the Lambda's V4. The Di Lambda in its short chassis form is capable of 85 miles an hour, an exceptional performance at the time. However, when you think of the Di Lambda, you think of a luxury motor car or an open tourer, but certainly not a low-slung open-wheel racer. Well, in fact, Lancia built 3 racing prototypes for racing in Eritrea. Eritrea was an Italian colony, and its capital, Asmara, was heavily populated by Italians, and motor racing was in their veins. and the local automobile club would organise hill climbs and street races. The roads were tough and the cars needed to be tough too, so the Di Lambda's robust build around a semi-monocoque design and sliding pillar front suspension was a perfect candidate for Lancia to send racing in Eritrea.
And that is quite some sliding pillar front suspension there, isn't it? And this is the only known Di Lambda racing special created in a similar vein to those 3 original racing prototypes. It's been shortened, narrowed and lowered, and that's just Mr. O'Rourke. Powered by the trusty 4-litre V8, you've been shortened, narrowed and lowered. Did you know that? A US serviceman based in Eritrea after the war discovered this car and took it back home with him. It would remain in America, relatively unknown to the wider public until 2020. Now fully restored back to running condition, a host of original features are still present, and it's an exciting piece of unexpected racing history from Lancia. Fabulous, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now, we're a very special couple in a very special motor car who have been trying to get here for the last 72 years. It's the 1913 Mercer Model 35J Raceabout, presented by David Goodin and Dawn Herans, of course, of Goodin & Company. Thank you for being here and thank you for being part of the event. The product of the brilliant self-taught engineer Finlay Robertson Porter, who was given a directive by the directors of Mercer to build a dual-purpose sporting road car that would be competitive for road racing. The Mercer Raceabout is widely recognised as one of the first mass-produced sports cars. Just a quick question, Richard. You said you had a model of this from did you get it new in 1913? Sorry. Anyway, Porter famously remarked, we built race cars and sold them to the public. And I mean, that's really a mantra used by many manufacturers to this day. Mercers were so competitive that they were virtually unbeatable in the 300 cubic inch class and often defeated much larger engine cars in the unlimited classes. This was due to their incredible handling, which was far superior to many of the cars of their era. And this raceabout is the earliest 1913 model built, which was the first year for Mercer to utilise the famous lightning fast 4-speed gearbox. Do you agree, David? Is it good? Rick's agreed. And one of the few raceabouts that has a history that can be traced all the way back to its first owner, Arthur Hastings.
Now, the second owner was Captain Reginald Thomas, who purchased the Mercer around 1922. And Thomas was a pioneer American aviator who led many of the reconnaissance flights for the US Navy during the First World War. During his ownership, Thomas repainted the Mercer from its original factory canary yellow paint, which can still be found on the car in a few places, into the dark grey and red undercarriage that the car still wears today. In 1934, it was sold to Cameron Bradley. Bradley was well known as having one of the first automotive museums in the US, and he was one of the founding members of the Veteran Motor Car Club of America. Bradley and the VMCCA were keen to promote the preservation and usage of early automobiles. The raceabout was a star attraction at his Wolf Pen Auto Museum, as well as the early VMCCA meets at Raceland and the 1939 and 1940 New York World's Fair exhibitions. It's been part of the Gooding family since 1975. It's participated in numerous tours and shows, including being the oldest car ever to compete in the Colorado Grand 1,000-mile tour. And as Peter said, it is a great honour to have the car here today. This is the very first time the Mercer has been outside of the United States, and one of the few times a T-head Mercer has been seen in the UK and Europe. And David and Dawn, it's great to have you here. Thank you for your support as Gooding & Company, but in particular, thank you for bringing this special motor car. And just to put right that story you nearly told, I had a Matchbox model, the little Matchbox model, the Mercer Raceabout, when I couldn't even walk, and it's been my favourite model ever since. I love this car, yeah. And the owner has promised to take me for a ride in it sometime soon. So thank you very much for bringing it.
And I mean, look at the details. Look at these hairsprings just holding the bonnet straps down. If you have a chance to look at this car,
go and look at it.
Gentlemen, please have a close look at all the details. It's very special and first time here ever. So thank you.
Bye. So this, Peter, 1950 Ferrari 166 Inter Cabriolet by Stabilimenti Farina. And now, although he had a long career in racing and team management, initially with Alfa Romeo and then establishing Scuderia Ferrari, Enzo Ferrari did not build a car bearing his name until he was 49, and he was over 50 when the 166 made his debut. powered by the Colombo design V12 of just under 2 litres, and as you know, 12 times 166 equals 1992cc. Ferrari's 166 was incredibly successful in the major race events of the period, including Le Mans, the Mille-Miglia, as well as the Targa Florio. Just 37 examples were built, and the leading Italian carrozzeria of Touring, Ghia, Farina, Vignale and Bertoni were all engaged to clothe the 166 chassis.
Thank you. If you'd like to move on, because I know you want to get off. You're okay for the moment. So anyway, here we have the sublimely gorgeous Inter Cabriolet by Stabilimenti-Farina, later become Pininfarina. It's known as an Inter as a car built in road tune. The cars built for racing would usually also have chassis numbers and later became referred to as exports. Completed in September 1950, it went on display at the Paris Motor Show a month later, before heading to Brussels and Geneva for the Expos in 1951. And following an aristocratic life in Switzerland, where it also took part in competitive events, it was discovered in a scrapyard in Switzerland some years later. The following years were not clean, but however, in 2013, it was acquired by a more caring owner with the objective of returning it to its original Stabilimenti-Farina specification. And Ferrari Classiche, the factory themselves, were entrusted with the task in 2016 of restoring the car back to this wonderful and period-correct condition as you see it today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for bringing it.
Thank you for being patient. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have another great supporter of this event, Mr. Dr. Terry Bramwell, CBE, and his partner. Thank you, very nice to see you. In his 1914 Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost Van den Pla. And as you can see, compared to AX201, even in these few years, coach builders had already started lowering the profile of the cars, making them sleeker, the bodies fitted to these luxury sporting motor cars. This was built around a colonial London to Edinburgh chassis with this 4-speed gearbox and high ground clearance. The rolling chassis was shipped to Van den Pla coach builders in Belgium in 1914 to be clothed in this handsome torpedo Grand Lux, a style inspired by the Earls Court Motor Show cars of the previous year. Subsequently, this car, 26RB, was shipped from Van den Pla only days before the German invasion of Belgium, the start of World War I. The other two Silver Ghosts, which were in the Van den Pla factory on the 6th of August 1914, were destroyed, meaning that this is also the very last pre-war Silver Ghost to have been bodied by Van den Pla. And it is, in fact, the only surviving Silver Ghost with coachwork by Van den Pla, still in its complete and original condition.
Now, the coachwork was revolutionary, featuring full disappearing top, toolboxes fitted to both running boards, one-piece steel bodywork with no seams, and clock boards fitted with instruments and switches. It also features armchair rear seating, as you can see, and complete silver and glassware set as supplied to it when it was new. She was sold to Messrs. Castanqueira, Lima and Rougeroni Limited in Lisbon, Portugal, who are believed to have owned the car for at least 40 years. It was then sold to Mr. Pestana in Portugal, who moved to Spain before the Portuguese Revolution in the mid-1970s. Upon Mr. Pestana's death in the mid-90s, the car was put into storage and was able to be purchased in 2005 by Mr. Deneen Stafford of Tifton, Georgia, before being purchased by the current owner and brought back to the wonderful condition you can see it in today. Terry, thank you very much for bringing it. Thanks, Terry. Looking fantastic. So's the car.
They look like a later edition, don't they?
That's the aircon, that is.
Yeah, air conditioning. And now we have, coming on stage, is the 1965 Ferrari 275 GTB from a private collection, driven by Mr. Fisken, I should say, and Carolina. Nice to see you.
Now launched at the Paris show in 1965, the 275 Berlinetta is one of the most beautiful, sought-after, prized, exhilarating and usable of all classic Ferraris. 3.3-litre front-engine V12 power, triple Webers, long bonnet, steeply sloping screen, shark-like gills in the wings and sail panels and Nardi woodrim steering wheel. This is one of the most iconic, prized, exhilarating and usable sports cars of the 20th century, and as one might imagine that a list of celebrities and race drivers that wanted one was extensive. And one of those who joined the waiting list for a new car was Jean-Paul Belmondo, but he was not to be successful, despite Belmondo being one of the biggest French film stars of the 1960s. However, in stock and ready to go was this example, originally specified in Grigio Argento over Pelle Rossa, with specially ordered Connolly Rosso carpets. It was further enhanced with a chrome grille guard and a single competition-style exterior mirror, as you can see. The Rosso Rubino paintwork was specified by Belmondo.
And Belmondo, or Mr. Fiskin, kept it for many years, and more importantly, the passenger seat enjoyed its time beneath his girlfriend Ursula Andress. That's a bit naughty, isn't it? Anyway, in March of 1969, Andress and Belmondo traded this car against a Rosso Rubino Maserati Ghibli. It was then sold to the French Ferrari aficionado Patrick Falcon. Falcon emigrated to Africa for work and was forced to sell his Ferrari. However, he made a promise that when he returned, he'd be allowed to buy it back. And in 2001, that's what happened. And he took this car to America with him. An early example of the 275 from 1965, it has many distinctive features, such as these Campagnolo alloy wheels and the slotted wheel, the steering wheel there, which is different from the later cars. It's the first time it's been shown in Europe in many years, but more importantly, paintwork, much of this car is original. But I'd like to know, Gregor, is the leather seats the same that the bikini-clad Ursula Andress sat on? What do you think? Tell me about the bikini-clad Ursula Andress. Oh, anyone like?
Mrs. Fiskin is doing full justice to the looks and the beauty of Ursula Andress, and she's sitting on the same leather, on the same carpet. This car is absolutely time capsule, and yeah, it's a rare survivor. But can you imagine this car? Because both Belmondo and Andress were filming in Italy at the time. I mean, they just must have been. You couldn't get more beauty rolled up into one automobile.
Actually, we can. And we have it. Thank you.
Gregor, thanks for bringing it. Good to see you both. Looking good.
Okay, now, Richard, ladies and gentlemen, we have the 1922 Lorraine Dietrich B36 from a private collection. Perhaps not such a well-known marque today, but a marque steeped in early motor racing endeavour. Initially specialising in railway locomotives, the Société Lorraine des Anciens Établissements de Dietrich, I can't say that, I can speak Italian, not French. Anyway, better known as Lorraine Dietrich, began making automobiles in 1896, and Lorraine Dietrich was one of the first pioneers of motor racing and took part in the ill-fated Paris-Madrid race in 1903. Which was stopped at Bordeaux after too many accidents and fatalities. After manufacturing military equipment, including aircraft engines, during the First World War, the French manufacturer took part in the first edition of the Le Mans 24 Hours in 1923 with one of these models, the B36. This took second and third places, an astonishing achievement, behind Bentley in 1924 before winning in 1925. They also finished in the top 3 places in 1926. Lorraine Dietrich thus entered the early history of the 24 Hours of Le Mans as the first manufacturer to score a 1, 2, 3 finish. Quite an achievement.
Quite an achievement. And the B36 is powered by 3.4 litre straight 6 with overhead valves, hemispherical head, aluminium pistons and a 4-bearing crankshaft, and was available either as a long wheelbase or a short wheelbase. It has 4-wheel drum brakes, even though the wooden artillery wheels might make you think it was an earlier build. And with its proud-looking radiator, it's not altogether dissimilar in look to a 3-litre Bentley. This handsome open tourer was good for 60 miles an hour and was clearly a very reliable steed given its performances against Bentley at the Le Mans 24 Hours. In 1935, the company shut down motorcar production completely to focus on manufacturing aeroplane engines. So we're very fortunate to have this wonderful example here with us, and we're very grateful to you for bringing it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Travelled and rakish example it is. Chassis 32 PB started life in April 1914, fitted with 2-seat open tourer coachwork with a dicky seat by Angus Sanderson Coach Builders of Thomas Street in Newcastle upon Tyne. Angus Sanderson would in fact go on to manufacture motorcars under their own name. Now, its first owner was Sir Frederick Mills, a British iron and steel magnate and a Member of Parliament who kept the Ghost until 1917. He went on to have 2 further keepers in the UK and would later be fitted with limousine coachwork until being exported to the USA just after the war. Now, it's understood that Wilkinson Coach Builders originally fitted this open tourer-style body in around 1973. And after a period sunning herself in Santa Barbara, California, 32 PB was acquired by Ed Swearingham in disrepair as she moseyed across Texas in the late 1980s, where a full and proper restoration got under starters orders.
And apparently the Wilkinson open tourer coachwork was loosely fitted to the chassis and a lengthy and painstaking restoration was completed. Some modifications were made, ensuring that it was accurate to the London to Edinburgh configuration she proudly displays today. And in addition, Swearingham, an aircraft designer and restorer, made a couple of additional modifications, such as an external oil feed and a sight glass for the sump, making maintenance and starting much easier. And she now just takes 30 minutes to get going in the morning. That's less than me and you.
Yes, so as quick as anything, that is. Thank you very much for bringing it.
And next up, we've got a very, very important Ferrari, a 1962 Ferrari 250 GT short wheelbase Berlinetta, again from a private collection. And following on from Ferrari's 1950 sports racing Berlinetta, the legendary 250 GT Tour de France, an example of which we have today. Hello, James. The all-new short wheelbase was, as the name would suggest, was built on a new, shorter chassis, some 20 centimetres shorter. But again, as the 250 short wheel in its name suggests, it was powered by the 12-cylinder engine of 3 litres, producing around 280 horsepower in road trim. And another leap forward from the TDF was the adoption of disc brake technology in the short wheelbase, making it highly competitive on the track. Designed by Pininfarina and constructed by Scaglietti, short wheelbases could be ordered in road or competition trim. However, very much intended for racing. 45% of the cars were bodied in lighter aluminium and the remainder in steel. And as part of the gentleman drivers racing scene in the 1960s, the short wheelbase is a car that could really be driven to the circuit, compete in a race, and then driven home via the bar. 167 cars were manufactured in total between 1959 and 1962, and even rarer, this car is one of just 14 right-hand drive short wheelbases built.
Now, completed in 1962, this example boasts many desirable features, such as the competition style, such as the quarter lights on the side windows, a flatter shape to the top of the side windows, tear-shaped front side lights, and a rear air vent in the roof. Beautifully restored and finished in its original colour of Verde Tavere, which was a colour actually borrowed from the Maserati palette. But to prove that it's not just a stunning-looking car to look at, during a Concours of Elegance, it's also driven properly and recently raced at the highly competitive Goodwood Revival. And the 250 short wheelbase Berlinetta is definitely a car on many people's wish lists, and only the best collectors can collect them. Thank you very much indeed, James, for bringing it. And now we have this delightful 1926 Bentley Sport 6.5 litre, brought to us by Chris Brundle. Thank you, Chris. Another great supporter of the concourse. Delighted to see you here. I know everybody's had great fun in God's own country earlier this week, so I'm glad you survived it. Now, when you talk about 6.5s, the Speed 6 was so magnificent in performance reliability that it became legendary. And so if you mention a Speed 6 to anybody, any motoring enthusiast, images of thunderous Bentleys chasing their headlights throughout the night at the South are conjured up. But every sporting and wealthy Englishman wanted to be seen driving a car similar to the legendary Bentley boys of Le Mans fame. Now, based on the same chassis and engine configuration as the Speed 6 Le Mans races, YR633 was the 42nd Big Bentley, as it was known, on the sports chassis, to be produced for sale in 1926. And the first owner, Mrs. Chumley of Wiltshire, took delivery in September that year. This particular Bentley is the last 11-foot chassis with its original one-off aluminium body still on the car. Many other examples of this chassis lost their original bodies due to their conversion to racing specification or van and par replicas of one type or another.
and it's clothed, Richard, in this majestic style by H.J. Mulliner. It's known as a 4-light drop-head coupe with a dicky seat and wind-up windows, the height of luxury. Also known as the Simplex Coupe in the Bentley factory records. It's referred to as the 3/4 fold-in head coupe. Lots of complicated names, but the hood mechanism is folded very flat, 4-light Beatonson patented hood, which not only folds the top bows, but also folds the metal window frames and the channels for all 4 windows. So it really is a proper sort of convertible, giving you full enclosure when it's up. The exhaust system has a distinctive fishtail. The louvered vents in the sides of the bonnet were added by the factory a couple of years into her life due to some mechanical alterations regarding the dynamo. But also she has spent much of her life in South Africa and was found in Rhodesia in 1964, abandoned sadly, but complete before a full restoration by her new owner. She still wears all of her original mechanical components, and when sold back to a UK owner in 1976, she was assigned her original registration number YR633, and we talked about the importance of original registration numbers, particularly in the UK. She then spent a period of time in Portugal and the United States before taking part in several vintage rallies, both in North America and South Africa, and then returned to the United Kingdom in 2016 to form part of a highly regarded private collection.
Highly regarded.
Thank you for bringing the car.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's a popular car. Okay, so next up.
All being well, in just a few minutes, we'll have a 1953 Delahaye 135 MSCL Speciale by Ferrari. Just needs a bit of assistance. The trouble is, you see, we keep them waiting and then they turn them off and can't turn them on again, so we accept the blame, or sorry. So, ladies and gentlemen, delighted to welcome this lovely 1953 Delahaye 135 MSCL Speciale. Yeah, sorry to keep you waiting, but anyway, well done on getting mobile. Now, perhaps better known for elaborate pre-war Art Deco motor cars, Delahaye was finding the going very tough by the early 1950s, relying more on revenues from building trucks than luxury motor cars. However, this did not stop them from building some magnificent motor cars, and this is one such example. Ferrari produced bodies for military and industrial applications, but also subcontracted for the likes of Citroën and Panhard. They created several bespoke bodies for Delahaye, and this particular model was made by them with the intention to show it at the 1953 Paris Motor Show. It's based on a pre-war 135 chassis, powered by a 3.6-litre straight-six driven via a Kotal Mark 35 electromagnetic transmission. And the 35 in the name indicates 3.5-litre, MS indicates Modifié Spéciale, and CL indicates Carrosserie Le Valois.
Well done. Very good French. So to construct the car, Ferrari got in touch with Fassel, with whom he'd had worked with Simca, Delahaye and Ford's French arm, and this collaboration led to the Delahaye wearing features that would preview the styling of the later Fassel Vega HK500, such as the stacked headlights as we see on this car. And later, when the Fassel Vega HK500 was built, many of the panels were in fact identical to this prototype. So it also reminds us a little bit, in my opinion, of the 1950 Talbot Largo T26 Grand Sport in some respects. The car would never make its appearance at the 1953 Paris Expo though, and after all of this, the one-off prototype would not see the road until 1981. It was more recently restored, fully restored by the expert craftsmen at Carrosserie Tessier in France, experts in this type of motor car. It's a piece of elegant post-war French design that we may never have had the chance to enjoy had it not been brought back to life. So thank you for bringing it.
Thank you very much for bringing this wonderful car.
Well. That's cool.
Beautiful.
It's got a couple of TV screens in there. So Richard, the last car for this little section, and then we're going to interject with a separate presentation with Goodin & Company, is the 1968 Enzo Grifo 7-litre by Giugiaro, presented by Steve Groves. It's sleek, it's muscular, Italian design, aren't you just? By Giugiaro and Bertoni, combined with unrestrained thunderous, we said, come on, thank you. Yet reliable American power from Chevrolet. Built following the rift between Renzo Rivolta and Giotto Bizzolini, it's thought to have been named Grifo to taunt Enzo Ferrari, as Grifo is in fact the Italian for griffin, and griffins eat horses. The Cavallino Rampanti was eaten by the Grifo. First appearing in the 1965, the Grifo A3L, L standing for luxury, was essentially the luxurious road version of the race-bred Grifo A3C, C standing for competizione, I should say. Originally fitted with the most powerful version of the small block Chevy, mounted low and way back in the chassis, just like the Bizzarini. This is a Series 2 example, fitted, as we can see by this hump in the bonnet, with the big block 7-litre engine, V8. And the 7 litres can also be distinguished by the black hoop around the rear, this rear here, as well as the rear panel on the car.
Now this particular car is the second 7-litre car built, and the very first right-hand drive example, one of only 4 built. And as such, it was at also the 1968 Earl's Court Motor Show car, and cost as much as a Ferrari Daytona or a Lamborghini. Painted metallic pink and abandoned in the 1980s, it was rescued and restored by ISO and Bizzarini, leading authority Chris Lackner, taking on board some performance enhancements in the process, and it now produces 490 brake horsepower and 501 pounds of torque. Now the Grifo is one of the world's fastest production road cars in period. Around 400 were built in total, of which around 90 were fitted with the big block, as this has. The period advertising slogan read, "At 160 miles an hour, the loudest noise you can hear is an ISO Grifo," is another well-known Italian sports car trying to keep up. Or weren't they cheeky? Thank you very much for bringing the car.
Thank you. So, new to you, Richard.